Hello and welcome to the lesson. Today we'll be coding the footer of our website. The footer is usually at the very bottom of each website. Therefore, we'll create its code under all current elements, including the wrapper div with the page ID. I'll create a div element with a footer ID right before the body closing tag. This will be the main footer wrapper. Next, I'll switch to the style sheet, insert the footer ID selector and a couple of properties. The width is set at 100%. This ensures that the wrapper will stretch out over the entire width of the screen. Again, we're using a small image in combination with the background repeat property. Now the background is finished and we can take a look at the result. Once again, the content itself is limited by the width of 960 pixels, so the content section of the footer has to be in another div element. This time the ID attribute is set to footer wrapper. I'll switch to the style sheet and paste a corresponding code. The width is set to 960 pixels. I want the whole content section to be centered, so I set the margin property to 0 auto. As we can see, however, there's no change in the browser. Let's continue with creating the actual content. First, the Our Services section. I'll switch to Code Editor and paste a block of HTML code. The wrapper of this section is created by a div element with an Our Services ID. The heading of this section is inside an H2 element. Let's switch to the style sheet and edit the appearance a little. First, I'll create a uniform style for all H2 headings. Next, I'll set the width and a floating direction. When we view the website in a browser, we can see a correctly placed heading. Let's move on and create a list of offered services. The best way to do that is to use the UL element. We're already familiar with this element, so I'll just paste the code. Notice that each item of the list is also a link. These links can lead to further information about each individual service. After refreshing the website, we can see that the list doesn't look very good. As usual, we're going to sort it out using CSS. I'll switch to the style sheet and add two selectors. The first selector is for the whole UL element, and the second is for its individual items. The properties of the first selector only set text formatting and margin. Let's focus on the properties inside the LI element selector. Setting the height at 30 ensures sufficient vertical spaces between items. The background image here actually works as a bullet of each item. Therefore, the background repeat property is set to no repeat. Let's view the website in a browser. We can see that the list finally looks attractive. Thanks to the background position property, each bullet is displayed properly and is always right next to a corresponding item. The last thing to do here is adjust color and behavior of the links. This can be easily done by using pseudo classes. Notice that the hover pseudo class underlines the links. After refreshing the website, we can check to be sure that the links are styled correctly. The first section of the footer is finished. Next is the part with a form. Again, the main structure is created by a div element and an H2 heading. This time, the ID attribute of the wrapper div is set to newsletter. We don't have to bother with the heading's appearance because we've already defined it globally for the whole footer. Switch to the style sheet and focus only on the div element. You'll notice that the width is a bit wider compared to the Our Services section. Why is that? Each of the three footer sections has a different type of content. To make the footer look symmetrical, each section has to have a slightly different width. After refreshing the website in a browser, we can see a new heading. Now let's create the form. I'll switch to Code Editor and add a block of HTML code. We can see that the form consists of two text boxes and one submit button. However, if we view the result in a browser, we'll see that some additional styling needs to be applied. I'll switch to the style sheet and paste another two rules. The first rule sets width and top margin of the whole form. The second rule styles all three input elements. Notice that the boxes and submit buttons have round corners. This was done using the border radius property. When you view the website in a browser, you'll see a much better result. I'd like to style the text boxes a bit differently from the submit button. An easy solution would be to attach a special class to the first two elements. However, using the so-called attribute selectors will be much more efficient. I'll paste the actual code to show you what I mean. You can now see that the first rule applies only to those input elements which have the type attribute set to text. Those are the two text boxes in our website. The second rule then applies to input elements with the type attribute set to submit. Notice that the elements differ, especially in size, background color, and text color. After refreshing the website, we can see that the newsletter section is finished. The last section is the Get in Touch. Basically, it's a copy of the Our Services section, so we can go ahead and paste the whole code. The only difference is that the individual list items are not links. I'll switch to the style sheet, set the width and a floating direction. We don't have to style the list since we've already done that. After refreshing the page, we can see that the last section is also rendered correctly. Now we'll create a graphic separator. I call it a graphic separator because it's actually an image saved in the Images directory. We can easily display it in the website using the IMG element. Don't forget the ALT attribute. If you do, the code won't be valid. Switch to the style sheet and set bottom and top margin of the separator. Let's view the page in a browser. We can see that the separator appeared. The very last thing to do is add a copyright note. You can see that it consists of a div element and the actual text. There is no need to make any special adjustments in CSS. Just set the size and color of the text. Refresh the page once more and check the result. Our website is now finished. We hope that you've enjoyed our course and wish you the best of luck as you build your own Internet projects.